Okay, so we are 2 minutes past noon, so I will start. We are already 16 in this meeting. And unusually, that won't be Pierre that will be presenting this tech deep dive. It will be me. We are going to talk about the Trust Framework 2210 implementation, how to onboard participants, how we make controls, and a short opening on how we propose to share credentials in the near future. I will start by presenting myself, introducing myself. So I'm Evan. As you might have heard it, I'm French, based in France, and I'm a member of the Gaia-X CTO team. I'm located in France, and we have people in Belgium, in France, in Germany, in Italy, and even in Spain. I usually work as a full stack developer, so basically backend and frontend. I also work on the CI/CD deployment and chart and stuff like that. And today we are going to talk about technical things. I will try to keep it short because it's noon and it's lunchtime, but we are going to talk about verifiable credential and verifiable presentation. We will talk a bit about RDF and Shackle, OpenCipher, and cloud events. So let's get started. What is the state of the Trust Framework 2210 and how is it implemented at the moment? We already implemented the legal person, the service offering, legal registration number, and Gaia-X terms and conditions. Service offering subclasses such as resources, data resources, virtual resources, physical resources are a work in progress in the service characteristic working group. And they made huge progress lastly, so we expect them to be available like real soon in the upcoming weeks. You might have already seen this chart if you dug a bit in the readmes of compliance or registry projects, but this is the onboarding workflow in order to allow you to create a participant using Gaia-X. So you will need to create and issue a legal registration number, verifiable credential. You will need to prepare your legal participant verifiable credential, prepare and sign your terms and condition credential, and then pack everything in a verifiable presentation and send it to the compliance. The compliance does its work and returns you what we call a compliance credential with all your VCs, an integrity check, and it's signed by the compliance service. So I will just skip over my slides. How we do it. If you already read the Trust Framework, the architecture document, you might be familiar with these notions, but it can be hard to switch from vague notions to real-world credential and usage. So to help you with that, the CTO team worked on the wizard. So the wizard contains two modes. One is what we called the easy stepper mode or the onboarding mode, which allows you to just click, and then you have your credential, you can submit them to the compliance and you're done. And the other one that is a bit more complex because you can provide your keys, provide your DIDs. And it was already showed by Kai during the OSS community meeting, so you might be familiar with it. I will take the time to show you how it looks like. So the first step is the easy stepper mode. I will share the wizard. So this is available on wizard.lab.gaia-x.eu. There is a lot of new features in it because we worked on it. You can select your environment, your clearinghouse, the version you want to work with. So everything is there, and you have several items on the left menu. So this is the first item, the playground. You can do whatever you want in it. There is a stepper version of the same playground that allows you to create VCs using shapes. And we have this nice onboarding page that was made by Alexis that will allow you to create your VCs with a few clicks. So I will put my legal name. I have a legal registration number that is a UE VAT ID. So I'm based in France, so my VAT ID is French. My headquarters are in north of France, Hauts-de-France. So I will put my legal address in the form of an ISO 2166-2 code. You have a small help here to help you find your code. So you don't have to know it by heart. You can find them on the internet or even on the ISO website, even if they are making you pay to get the lists. So here's my participant. I have a legal name, a VAT ID, a headquarter address, a legal address, country code, and that's it. I will click on next. The wizard will ask me to sign and agree to the terms and conditions. Those are the terms and conditions that are in the trust framework document. So, okay, I agree to the terms and conditions. I will be nice and do not mess with other people's credentials. And here's a recap of what I'm going to sign with the wizard. So I have a legal participant credential. I have already my terms and conditions, and I will just sign them. Takes a few seconds because we are doing this in the browser and not on a backend server, so that the private keys do not transit on the internet or stuff like that. And you can see that I have 3 credentials in output: the legal participant, the terms and conditions, and the wizard was kind enough to ask the notary to provide the legal registration number VC, which is quite nice, as you might agree. So I have all my 3 credentials and I can call the compliance. The wizard takes all my verifiable credentials and put them in a verifiable presentation. A verifiable presentation is just an item that contains verifiable credentials. So as you can see, I have a participant, I have my terms and conditions, and I have my registration number. The wizard is made so that you know what you are lacking to send to the compliance. If you are sending a service offering, you have to send the legal participant, the terms and conditions, and the legal registration number, as well as the service offering. I will then submit them to the compliance, and if there is no demo effect, I should retrieve some credential issued by the compliance, which is the case here. So the output of the compliance is this. So this is a single verifiable credential containing several subjects, and each subject is one of the credentials I submitted. So the first I submitted was a legal registration number. I was asserted compliance against the Trust Framework 2210. The compliance engine gives me an integrity check. So by canonicalize, sorry, the original VC and SHA-256 it, I should end on the same integrity check. And this is the ID of the credential I submitted, and it should resolve to the VC, which is not the case here because I did not take a proper VC ID. Sorry about that. So I will take this one. And I'm on the issuer, which is not what I wanted. Sorry. Might be a small demo effect on here. Yeah, okay. This was fixed on the development branch, but not merged yet. So basically, the ID of each VC should be resolvable and should point on the VC hosted somewhere. This is required by JSON LD and verifiable credential specs, and it will allow people to synchronize their catalog by just pulling your credential from where you stored them, as opposed to you sending credential to catalogs. So this was the easy method, let's say. As you can see, I click, and then I have credentials. We have what I call the connoisseur mode, which means from the same wizard, I can go and do whatever I want to do. For example, I started the Swagger from the registration number notary, and I will just ask the notary to give me the legal registration number verifiable credential. So here it is. I will copy it and then import it in the wizard. So I have my legal registration number in the wizard. I will then sign using my own key and my own verification method. I will issue a participant. So as a reminder, this private key is not sent through the internet. Everything is done in the browser using web crypto. So I will hit with my participant. So I already prepared my payloads because obviously I wanted to avoid the demo effect, but there is some example already in the wizard, and there is some hints here where you need to fill the blanks. So I will fill the blanks. My legal registration number ID is this one. This is the one I put here and here. So I will point on the other VC using the magic of JSON link data. Using the ID will allow me to resolve to the other VC. And I put some IDs, and I'm ready to sign my participant. My participant is added on my holder, which means I'm able now to sign the terms and conditions. The terms and conditions are pretty different from the rest of the VCs because you need one term and condition per issuer, which means if you are issuing credential for another company or for other company services, you might need the other company terms and conditions signed and your own terms and conditions signed. Yeah, that's a way to ensure that everyone signs the terms and conditions. So I will sign my terms and conditions. So as you can see, I still have 3 credentials. I will add them. As you can see, some checks are done in the front end to ensure that my terms and conditions are the one for the legal participant I created, that the legal registration number is the one for my participant, and I can then submit to the compliance. Takes a few seconds because there is a lot of checks to be done in the back. And I have my credential that is pretty much looking like the other one, except that it's a new one that is just signed at the moment. Seems to be the case. Perfect. Here we are. It's pretty useful to onboard and to get a view on what's expected in Gaia-X ecosystem and how we translate specification into something more concrete. But we must admit that in the real world, you won't probably use the wizard. You will need in your information system to create prawns, batch, whatever, that will allow you to create your credentials, sign them with your own DID, maybe by putting your keys in a hardware key management system and stuff like that. And the wizard is pretty much for demo purpose. In fact, it does not work with the compliance in production mode. It works only on development mode, which is quite obvious because we won't provide you keys for production. You need to have your own keys. And I will go deeper in what I presented by showing you what's under the hood of the compliance engine. So under the hood of the compliance engine, there is several checks that are performed. Some of them are quite manual. Only check validity of this. I will go across the question just after. I will just continue a bit. So the compliance checks that the payload is a verifiable presentation, that it contains verifiable credentials. We will check that the signatures of each verifiable credential is valid. That's a JWS signature, so we can check that the payload was not modified or altered after signature. And we will check that the participant address country code are ISO 2166-2. We also have more controls. We check that every VC that you submit format is correct. To do so, we use what's called Shackle. It's provided by the W3C. The aim is like in XSD for the one familiar with XML. You have your data, you have your shape, and if they matches, well, that's a win. If they don't match, we throw an error saying that, okay, for example, in the service offering you sent, the provided by is not a legal participant. You did a mistake, you maybe pointed on the wrong VC, so check your input. There is a second control, this is the fact that we rely on trusted sources for the certificates, well, the key pair used to sign a verifiable credential. We verify that you used either an IDAS key pair, an EVSSL, or that you are Gaia-X, for example, with the notary. We assume that Gaia-X is allowed to issue notary credentials. That's in the trust framework. This is pretty transitive, but at the moment we are trusted anchor. That's the notion of trusted anchor you find in the registry. I told you it already, but we also verify that every credential issuer has a Gaia-X terms and condition VC, which means you can issue credential for other companies, but you will need to have your terms and conditions signed. And if you are pointing on someone else issued credential, you will need to have their terms and conditions signed. And finally, the legal registration number, VC, is issued by a trusted notary. I will go to the question about synchronization of catalogs and what do we do with credentials that were already submitted. I will go for it afterwards because I have some teasing to make about sharing credentials and catalogs. So the proper question is, how do we do checks on content? We could have write code, a lot of code, to ensure that in VC of type legal participant, I have a VC of type legal registration number that issuers was Gaia-X.lab.eu or whatever. That's not the way we chose. We chose to use graphs. In fact, if you look at a JSON-LD flattened, you can see that you have this triptych, subject, link, and subject, predicate, and object, as well as a small subgraph reference that we just don't use. So that means that JSON-LD, when flattened, can be represented so as a subject, predicate, object. It can be transformed to a graph to be queried. And we use memgraph to do so. So we take your credential, format it as a graph, put it in a GraphDB, and use OpenCipher to query it. A standard approach exists in SparkQL, but the syntax is less understandable and quite less used than OpenCipher, so we chose OpenCipher. So as you can see, a JSON-LD flattened and in form of a graph looks like that. And this is how we, for example, retrieve the terms and conditions issuer. So that's OpenCipher query. I will find issuer of a credential subject of type Gaia-X terms and condition. I have a credential ID so that I don't mix up several graphs. And yeah, that's it. I have the issuer of your terms and condition, and I can verify that every credential has these terms and conditions. We have a lot of questions about sharing the credentials to the world. We came not for a Tagus release, but for Loire release with an idea, a proposal for the community, which is the CES, so the Credentials Event Service. This is the first iteration. We backed it up with a Kafka cluster, and we aim to obviously use something less centralized, like some decentralized storage, such as IPFS or anything else. If you have ideas, that's the moment for you to shout out. This service, which is already on production and available, will be deployed in clearing houses so that we have some redundancy and fail-safe in case the lab one fails, which can be the case. This service only has two APIs, one to post your credential and a get to retrieve credentials. The post API is quite simple. We relied on the cloud event specification. So you will send cloud event with in it your Gaia-X credential, compliance credential you got from the compliance engine. Pretty straightforward. The source, in the source you can put whatever you want. You can put your catalog, you can put your company, whatever. The usage is free at the moment. When pushing in the post API, you will retrieve the events UUID that will allow you to find it when you will receive all the other events. How to get events? Well, that's a quite basic and simple paginated API. So you will put a page, a size, and you will receive a cloud events array. What does free at the moment mean? I mean, the field is free for use. Maybe at some point there will be specification on the field. Maybe some of the working groups will want a specific input in that field, but at the moment the field is free and the service is free of charge too, but I have no idea for the future. Regarding the GET API, you get an array of cloud events. I removed the data here for ease of reading, but in fact you have credentials, compliance credential in here. I know that keeping in memory, for example, the last page you called or stuff like that can be annoying. So this API allows you to just keep the last ID you received. For example, I will show you in a few seconds, but you can just keep the last ID you received in your last call, put it in the next call you will make, and you will get the difference between the last ID you received and the new that came. I know that we presented this component in the OSS community. We already discussed about webhooks, for example, so that you can be notified when a new credential is submitted to the service. That's a quite nice idea, but we need to discuss on how we can distribute these webhooks events without repeating them across all CES instances. Because if you get 20, 30 times the same event because we have 30 instances of the CES, you will be quite bored. So yeah, if you have ideas on how we can implement that, you are very welcome to contribute on it. I will just take a second to show the credential event service so that this is a Quarkus API made with Kotlin. And I will, for example, take the first page. So this is the development deployment, which means I have pretty much anything in the response. And for example, I will take this ID. So that means in my next call, if I execute it, I will get all the events past this ID I submitted. I might be able to demonstrate it, but this ID is DF7, whatever. I will execute the call and DF7 is no longer there. I'm getting the 20 next items from the ID I put, which allows you to better handle how you can receive the difference. That's quite unusual to do it like that, but we want it to be abstract from the backend we use. That's a way for us to prevent you to have the Kafka driver in your software, for example, which can be pretty heavy and annoying to set up. So this API is for convenience. And if we change the implementation tomorrow to rely on DHT or maybe whatever, anything else that is distributed, you don't have any change to make. We will do it, and yeah, you can just consume and post in the API. So the question is, what do I do with the credentials from the CES? So I will go back to the Swagger, and as you can see, every credential event contains the verifiable credential that was issued by the compliance, which means that you do pretty much whatever you want to do with this credential. We added the credential type so that if you are not interested in showing it in your catalog, you can just skip it. And yeah, that's perfectly fine. You can have the trust framework version that this credential was issued on. So you can, in the future, maybe discard the one that are 2210 in favor of the 20XX credentials. And regarding, it was the question about what do we do with credentials that have the same ID, for example. We have the idea that a credential that is reissued with the same ID is pretty much a replacement of the old credential. You have a new credential that is farther away in the queue. You will receive it and pretty much, in our mind at least, just replace the existing credential. But that's some catalog-specific implementation. Maybe you will want to have an history. Maybe you will want to not get this credential because you already had one. This is pretty much catalog-specific implementation, and there is nothing in the CS that forces you to do either option I mentioned. And yeah, just one more thing. The fact is that IDs of credentials should be resolvable so that a credential that you submit to the compliance and that you submit to the CES are resolvable for others. If they are not resolvable, nobody will be able to use them to get what's in it and to share, for example, your service offering. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I will keep it short because it's lunchtime, but if you want to keep in touch, if you have ideas for implementation, you are very welcome. You can keep in touch with us via GitLab, via issues or pull requests. The CTO team is mostly there in the ESS community calls. We are members of the newsletter and the mailing lists. We are on Slack and Matrix too, so you are very welcome to give us feedbacks wherever you want, whenever you want. They are very much appreciated, so yeah, feel free. And I will now iterate on the question I saw in the chat. So if you have some, feel free to raise them. Regarding the fact of resubmitting through the wizard all the VCs, yeah, we have a story about that. But there is something we need to find with the W3C regarding IDs, for example. When your credential subject and your verifiable credential have different IDs, what ID do you put as a reference? If you put the credential subject, then how can we go back to the verifiable credential to get the signature, for example? But yeah, we want to resolve the IDs and be able to just put the service offering, put the links to the participant, the legal registration number, and be free to not put every VCs in the presentation. Can you tell a bit about Las Vegas and how Catalog Sync is expected to work based on the compliant service credential? So yeah, Las Vegas was the internal name for the credential event service. The fact is that we provide you a way to share your credentials, and everything you make with this API is up to you. That's a catalog specific implementation. So if you want to display everything that the CS returns you, you are free to do it. If you want to resolve the ID and retrieve the VC and expose it on your front end, that's up to you. And yeah, that's pretty much up to you as a catalog owner or catalog developer. Is there any step-by-step guide for the whole process? I mean, the onboarding process is already documented, if I'm not wrong, on the compliance engine. I think we put it in the README because, yeah, obviously that's not, well, it's not easy to understand at the first glance. I think it's somewhere in the READMEs. Yeah. So I can share the link to this README at least, and I will obviously share my slides to everyone that wants it. So yeah, request LRN, sign your VC, sign your terms and conditions, and send them. Basically, the chart is here. One more thing, if you hit lab.gaia-x.eu, you will end up on our, that's per se, this is the engineering server management page, but if you hit something that does not exist, you will end on this page. And on this page, you can find every link that is available at the moment. So you will find the latest stable release for the clearinghouse of the registry, the compliance notary. You will find the source code link, the README link, and you can find the lab deployment of this component. So the registry latest table release, the latest stable playground deployment, and the latest unstable. So we propose them so that you can test and iterate on when we provide new features. And the credential event service is already there at the bottom of the page. I will share the link in the chat. I still struggle to understand whether the compliance service is just there for convenience to verify a VP. The compliance asserts the compliance regarding the trust framework and signs the VC you receive. You can get whatever compliance credential you want. If it was not signed by a notarized compliance engine, it is worth nothing. So you have an endpoint for that. You can have the list of trusted issuer for compliance. And yeah, if compliance credentials are sent and the issuer is not one of these, they are not compliance credential. What else? I think I pretty much iterated on everything at the moment. And if some of your colleagues were not able to attend, I will redo almost the same presentation in the next OSS community meeting. So they will have a chance to get the info from me. So feel free to join the OSS community call. It's Thursday at 9. I think that Guy is willing to share the link to the meeting if we need it. And yeah, have a great day, have a great lunch.